Welcome to World's History of Sports. Today, we are going to talk about a bit of sports history that shaped the world in the beginning of the 20th century. Let's start in the 1900s. France were hosting the first Olympic Games where women were allowed to compete. As for countries like Russia, they were able to send 5 athletes who did not want anything.
Speaking about athletes, we must mention some remarkable athletes at the time, such as Huyoya Niha, one of the most remarkable Kung Fu masters at the time, or Charlotte Cooper, who became the first female Olympic champion.
Talking about Olympics, let me mention the 1904 St. Louis Olympic Games, which introduced the three types of medals known today, and also highlight the performance of George Finnegan, who won a gold medal in the boxing category of flyweight. Another outstanding Olympic Games were the 1912 Stockholm Games, where all 5 continents sent athletes, and also where Oscar Schwan won several medals in track sports.
Hey, but you missed something. On 99, Makushiki Rishiki or Sumo Championship was held, which was a remarkable one. This was one of many inspirations of Masahiko Kimura, who was probably the best sumo fighter ever. Then, in 1918, World War I came to an end lasting over 4 years.
And in 1920, the Olympics were held in Belgium, where dopes were released as a sign of peace, and finally, 4 years later, the first Winter Olympic Games were hosted in France, which gave hopes to one of the most remarkable American winter athletes to win a medal. I am of course talking about the great Jack Amos Shea.
While in the new Soviet Union, the first Soviet Physical Education Day was celebrated in 1927. Then a year later, in 1928, the Soviet GTO was created in order to produce more Russian athletes. In the other hand, in China, another Kung Fu master was rising, Ip Man. He was the master of many big martial art masters such as Bruce Lee.
Back in America, Uruguay won the first World Cup at home in 1930. 2 years later, the LA Olympics and Lake Placid Winter Games were celebrated with a greater success.
3 years later, in the old continent, historic Fred Perry wins the 1935 Wimbledon Open, while in the USSR, tests to become recognized as a great soldier were introduced to the GTOs. Last but not least, the Detroit Tigers won the World Series, while Babe Ruth, considered by many the best baseballer of all time, retired in 1935.